Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to learn a very interesting and powerful English expression that native speakers use all the time in conversations, movies, interviews, podcasts and social media. The expression is, take it with a grain of salt. But before we begin, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard some shocking news online and immediately believed it only to discover later that it was exaggerated or completely false? If yes, then today's lesson is going to help you understand how English speakers warn others not to believe everything too quickly. Today we will deeply explore the expression, take it with a grain of salt. We will discuss its meaning, origin, usage, situations, emotional tone, grammar, style, and real-life examples. By the end of this lecture, you will be able to use this expression naturally and confidently in daily English communication. So let us begin. The expression, take it with a grain of salt, means to not completely believe something. It means you should be careful, doubtful, or skeptical about the information you hear. When someone tells you to take something with a grain of salt, they are advising you not to accept it as fully true because it may be exaggerated, inaccurate, misleading, or uncertain. In simple words, this expression means, do not believe it completely. Now let us understand this idea more deeply. Imagine your friend tells you that a celebrity secretly bought an island and is moving there forever. The story sounds exciting, but there is no proof. Another friend might say, take that news with a grain of salt. This means, be careful. It may not be true. This expression is very common in spoken English, especially when talking about rumors, gossip, online information, advertisements, promises, and opinions. Now let us understand why English speakers use the words, grain of salt. A grain of salt is a very tiny piece of salt. The idea behind the expression is that adding a little salt can make something easier to swallow. In ancient times, people believed salt had protective powers. So when listening to suspicious information, people would metaphorically add a little salt before accepting it. Over time, the phrase became a common idiom in English. Now let us focus on pronunciation. Take it with a grain of salt. Native speakers often pronounce it smoothly like this. Take it with a grain of salt. Notice how connected and relaxed the pronunciation becomes in fast English speech. Now let us break the expression into parts. Take it means receive or consider the information. With a grain of salt means with caution and doubt. Together the full expression means, consider the information carefully instead of believing it completely. Now let us discuss when people commonly use this expression. People use it when talking about rumors. People use it when discussing gossip. People use it when reading online comments. People use it when hearing promises from politicians. People use it when listening to advertisements. People use it when someone exaggerates stories. People use it when the source of information is unreliable. People use it when facts are unclear or uncertain. Now let us understand the emotional tone of this expression. This expression is usually casual, friendly, and conversational. It is not rude. It simply suggests caution. However, depending on tone, it can sometimes show mild distrust or skepticism. For example, if someone says, take his advice with a grain of salt, they are politely suggesting that the person may not be completely trustworthy or knowledgeable. Now let us compare this expression with similar English expressions. The first similar expression is, do not believe everything you hear. This sentence directly warns people to be careful about information. Another similar expression is, be skeptical. Skeptical means doubtful or questioning. Another similar expression is, question the source. This means you should think about where the information came from before believing it. Another similar expression is, treat it cautiously. This means handle the information carefully. Now let us discuss grammar usage. The most common structure is, take something with a grain of salt. For example, take his stories with a grain of salt. Take online rumors with a grain of salt. Take her promises with a grain of salt. You can also change the tense. I took his comments with a grain of salt. You should take that information with a grain of salt. People are taking social media news with a grain of salt nowadays. Now let us explore the expression in different real-life situations. Situation 1. Social media. Today millions of people get information from social media platforms. Unfortunately, not all information online is accurate. Fake news, edited videos and misleading headlines spread very quickly. That is why many experts say we should take social media information with a grain of salt. Situation 2. Advertising. Advertisements often make products sound perfect. A shampoo advertisement may promise magical hair growth in 7 days. A fitness product may promise instant results without exercise. Smart consumers take such claims with a grain of salt because advertisements often exaggerate. Situation 3. Gossip. Imagine someone in school or the office spreads rumors about another person. Responsible people should not immediately believe gossip. Instead, they should take it with a grain of salt until they know the truth. Situation 4. Political speeches. Politicians often make promises during elections. Some promises are realistic while others may be exaggerated. Voters often take political promises with a grain of salt. Situation 5. Celebrity news. Entertainment websites sometimes publish shocking stories about famous people just to attract attention. Readers should take celebrity rumors with a grain of salt. Now let us move toward examples. I will give you 5 powerful examples of the expression in natural English. Example 1. My friend said he saw a ghost last night, but I took the story with a grain of salt. This means the speaker did not completely believe the ghost story. Example 2. Take online health advice with a grain of salt because not every website is trustworthy. This example warns people to be careful with medical information online. Example 3. The company promised huge profits but investors took the claims with a grain of salt. This means investors were cautious and doubtful. Example 4. You should take his jokes with a grain of salt because he exaggerates everything. This means the person often says unrealistic things. Example 5. I heard the celebrity is retiring, but I am taking the news with a grain of salt until it is officially confirmed. This means the speaker is waiting for proof before believing the rumor. Now let us go deeper into the psychology behind this expression. Human beings naturally enjoy exciting information. Dramatic stories, emotional rumors, and shocking news attract attention quickly. Our brains often react emotionally before logically analyzing facts. That is why people sometimes believe misinformation without checking evidence. The expression, take it with a grain of salt, reminds us to slow down, think critically, and analyze information carefully before accepting it as truth. This expression encourages critical thinking. Critical thinking is extremely important in modern life because we live in an age of information overload. Every day people receive thousands of messages, advertisements, videos, headlines, and opinions. Some are true while others are misleading. Therefore, learning to take information with a grain of salt helps people become wiser, more balanced, and less easily manipulated. Now let us discuss how this expression appears in movies and television. In movies, one character may say, "Take what he says with a grain of salt. He likes attention." This immediately tells viewers not to fully trust the character. In detective stories, police officers may take witness statements with a grain of salt until evidence supports them. In comedy shows, characters often exaggerate stories and others respond by taking their words with a grain of salt. Now let us discuss how native English speakers naturally use this phrase in conversation. Native speakers rarely explain the full meaning because the idiom is very common in English-speaking cultures. For example, I heard our boss is quitting. Really? Yeah, but take it with a grain of salt. Notice how natural and smooth the expression sounds in casual conversation. Now let us discuss common mistakes learners make with this expression. Mistake 1. Some learners say, take it with grain salt. This is incorrect. The correct expression is, take it with a grain of salt. Mistake 2. Some learners use the expression for proven facts. For example, saying, "Take gravity with a grain of salt," sounds strange because gravity is scientifically proven. The expression should only be used for uncertain, doubtful, or exaggerated information. Mistake 3. Some learners use the expression too formally in academic writing. This idiom is more common in speech casual writing, blogs, videos, and conversations. In formal academic writing, people usually say, "Approach cautiously," or "Interpret carefully." Now let us compare this expression with another common idiom. "Take it with a grain of salt," versus "Believe it or not." "Believe it or not" introduces surprising information. "Take it with a grain of salt" warns people not to fully trust information. For example, "Believe it or not, he ran 20 kilometers barefoot." Take that story with a grain of salt because he exaggerates a lot. Now let us explore cultural importance. In many cultures, people value wisdom, caution, and careful thinking. English-speaking cultures especially encourage questioning information and verifying facts. This expression reflects that cultural attitude. It teaches people not to become too emotional or too gullible. Gullible means easily fooled. A gullible person believes everything quickly. Wise people take suspicious information with a grain of salt. Now let us practice some mini dialogues. Dialogue 1. "I heard that restaurant serves gold-covered burgers." "Maybe, but take it with a grain of salt until we see proof." Dialogue 2. "My cousin says he can become rich overnight through crypto trading. I would take that advice with a grain of salt." Dialogue 3. "This website says drinking lemon water cures every disease. You should definitely take that claim with a grain of salt." Dialogue 4. "The actor said he never sleeps more than 2 hours. I am taking that statement with a grain of salt." Dialogue 5. "My friend claims he met the president yesterday. Take that story with a grain of salt." Now let us discuss how this expression improves your spoken English. Using idioms makes your English sound more natural, fluent, and advanced. Native speakers use idioms constantly in everyday communication. When you correctly use expressions like, "Take it with a grain of salt," you sound more confident and conversational. However, remember that idioms should be used naturally. Do not force them into every sentence. Now let us examine the deeper meaning of skepticism. Skepticism does not mean negativity. It does not mean rejecting everything. Healthy skepticism means carefully evaluating information before accepting it. For example, scientists are skeptical when studying new discoveries. Journalists should be skeptical when investigating stories. Consumers should be skeptical when seeing unrealistic advertisements. This balanced attitude protects people from deception. The expression, "Take it with a grain of salt," represents healthy skepticism. Now let us imagine a modern digital world scenario. A viral video spreads online claiming that a famous actor secretly married someone in another country. Millions of people immediately share the video without checking facts. Later it turns out the video was fake. This situation perfectly shows why people should take online content with a grain of salt. Now let us discuss another important point. This expression does not always mean something is false. Sometimes information is partially true but exaggerated. For example, if your friend says, "The exam was impossible," you might take that statement with a grain of salt because students often exaggerate difficult experiences. The exam may have been hard but perhaps not impossible. So the expression often suggests partial doubt rather than complete disbelief. Now let us explore vocabulary connected to this expression. Rumor means unofficial information that may or may not be true. Gossip means casual talk about other people, often involving personal matters. Exaggerate means make something seem bigger, better, worse, or more dramatic than reality. Skeptical means doubtful or questioning. Reliable means trustworthy and dependable. Misleading means giving a wrong impression. Credible means believable and trustworthy. These words often appear in conversations involving the expression, "Take it with a grain of salt." Now let us create a storytelling situation for better understanding. Imagine a young man named Ali who spends hours reading social media every day. One day he sees a post saying that eating chocolate every morning guarantees perfect health and weight loss. Excited by the idea, he immediately starts eating large amounts of chocolate daily. After several weeks, he gains weight instead of losing it. Later, he discovers the article was written by an unreliable website trying to attract attention. His friend laughs and says, "You should have taken that article with a grain of salt." This story teaches us an important lesson about critical thinking and responsible information consumption. Now let us discuss workplace communication. In offices, people often hear rumors about promotions, resignations, salary increases, and company changes. Smart professionals avoid spreading unverified information. They take workplace gossip with a grain of salt until official announcements are made. This helps maintain professionalism and avoid misunderstandings. Now let us discuss education. Teachers often encourage students to question sources, especially during research projects. Students should not automatically trust every website or online article. They should verify information from reliable academic sources. In this context, students learn to take questionable sources with a grain of salt. Now let us explore family conversations. Parents sometimes tell children exaggerated stories to teach lessons or encourage good behavior. Children eventually learn to take some dramatic warnings with a grain of salt. For example, if you swallow gum, it stays in your stomach for 7 years. Many children hear this story but later discover it is not literally true. Now let us focus on advanced usage. Sometimes speakers use the expression humorously. For example, "My cooking advice should probably be taken with a grain of salt because I burned instant noodles yesterday." This self-humorous use makes conversations friendly and entertaining. Now let us compare American and British usage. Both American English and British English commonly use this expression. It is widely understood across English-speaking countries. Some people also say, "Take it with a pinch of salt," especially in British English. Both expressions have the same meaning. Grain of salt and pinch of salt both suggest caution and skepticism. Now let us discuss body language and tone. When saying this expression, speakers often smile slightly, raise eyebrows, or lower their voice a little. These nonverbal signals show uncertainty or doubt. For example, "Take his stories with a grain of salt." The speaker's tone usually sounds relaxed rather than aggressive. Now let us practice pronunciation again. Take it with a grain of salt. Repeat slowly. Take it with a grain of salt. Now faster. Take it with a grain of salt. Excellent. Now let us create 5 more advanced examples. Example 6. Financial experts advised investors to take the company's optimistic predictions with a grain of salt. Example 7. During election season, people should take dramatic political advertisements with a grain of salt. Example 8. My grandfather takes internet conspiracy theories with a grain of salt. Example 9. Travel bloggers sometimes exaggerate luxury experiences, so readers should take sponsored reviews with a grain of salt. Example 10. The athlete claimed he trained 20 hours a day, but reporters took the statement with a grain of salt. Now let us discuss why this expression is important for English learners. Understanding idioms is essential because native speakers use them naturally in movies, podcasts, interviews, books, and daily conversations. If you only understand literal meanings, you may become confused. For example, if someone literally imagines putting salt on information, the expression will seem strange. But once you understand the figurative meaning, the conversation becomes clear. Idioms make language colorful, expressive, and culturally rich. Now let us imagine another conversation. I heard that drinking cold water after meals is dangerous. Really? I do not know. I would take that claim with a grain of salt. Notice how the expression politely introduces doubt without directly insulting anyone. This is important because English speakers often prefer indirect, polite communication instead of blunt disagreement. Now let us discuss social intelligence. Wise communicators know when to believe information and when to question it. Blind trust can create problems while excessive distrust can damage relationships. The expression, "take it with a grain of salt," represents a balanced middle path. It encourages caution without complete rejection. Now let us discuss how journalists use this idea. Professional journalists verify information before publishing stories. They often receive anonymous tips, rumors, and unofficial reports. Responsible journalists take such information with a grain of salt until they confirm evidence. This protects public trust and accuracy. Now let us discuss scientific thinking. Science depends on evidence, observation, and testing. Scientists do not immediately accept extraordinary claims without proof. They examine data carefully. In a way, scientific thinking itself involves taking unverified claims with a grain of salt. Now let us review the main points of today's lesson. The expression, "take it with a grain of salt," means do not completely believe something. It suggests caution, skepticism, and careful thinking. It is commonly used for rumors, gossip, advertisements, online information, promises, and exaggerated stories. The expression is friendly, conversational, and widely used in English-speaking cultures. British English sometimes uses the variation, "take it with a pinch of salt." Using this idiom correctly makes your English sound more natural, fluent, and advanced. Now before we finish, let us hear 5 final practical examples. Final example 1. Take celebrity gossip with a grain of salt because many stories are invented for attention. Final example 2. My uncle always exaggerates his adventures, so we take his stories with a grain of salt. Final example 3. The advertisement sounded amazing, but customers took the promises with a grain of salt. Final example 4. You should take anonymous online comments with a grain of salt. Final example 5. I heard the school might close tomorrow, but I am taking the rumor with a grain of salt until the principal confirms it. And with that, we come to the end of today's lecture. I hope you now fully understand the meaning, usage, and importance of the expression, "take it with a grain of salt." The next time you hear shocking news, dramatic gossip, or unbelievable promises, remember this powerful English idiom and think carefully before believing everything immediately. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. Keep learning, keep improving, and keep growing your English vocabulary every single day. Before you leave, let me ask you one final question. What is one piece of information you heard recently that you had to take with a grain of salt?